Oh my gosh, guys. Oh, one of the most stressful days I've ever had in the stock market was here today. We got to get into this. I'm going to tell you exactly what has transpired here today in relation to Coinbase. My situation with Coinbase, oh my gosh, has it gotten ugly. I'm going to tell you where I think Coinbase stock is going next, what I think is about to happen to Coinbase stock. Oh my gosh, guys, we gotta get into a lot, okay? This is usually the part of the video where I usually pitch my private stock group, but I don't even want anybody joining in there right now, man. I was such a mess in there today. I'm just ashamed, okay? So Coinbase, this whole situation starts last night. Start looking into this company, okay? And I look into it. I put out this video around my price targets for Coinbase and things like that. And so, cool, okay? Then I go ahead, right after that, I hop on Millennial Money and talking with, the gentleman there on Millennial Money about Coinbase. And man, I got to say, I was almost feeling a little bearish, like I was maybe too bearish on the stock. And I really liked the stock, but at certain prices. And then, the guys, they got me feeling like, man, I should even be willing to buy this at higher prices. And man, did I get my flapjacks flipped. Today's a good example of when you YOLO and it goes wrong, okay? And then, so I wake up this morning and I'm upstairs and I got no CNBC upstairs. I'm trying to wake up and I'm looking at my iPad and I'm like, shoot, did I miss the Coinbase IPO? I'm like, is it already pricing? So I go ahead and I'm like, I don't have CNBC up there. I'd have to come downstairs. So I'm trying to wake up. So I put on, I get on my iPad, I go to YouTube and I'm like, I know Kevin's got CNBC on. So I go on Kevin's channel and I start watching it. And everybody's like on there, man. It's like 39,000 people are watching this live. Everybody's like jacked up and it hasn't gone IPO yet. So I'm like, oh, I might actually get in on this. I never bought an IPO in my life. Never in my life have I bought a stock the day it went public, okay, which this isn't even an IPO, it's direct listing. But I've never bought any stock the day it went public ever. This is like my one stock I'm going to ever potentially do this on, okay? In between, what happened last night and seeing everybody excited about it, man, I'm feeling pretty dang good. And just seeing that Kevin video reminded me, I got to buy some Tattooed Chef stock today because it's going to $24 over the next 10 years. So I'm like, I got to buy some Tattooed Chef. So I go ahead, I buy some Tattooed Chef, okay? Then I go ahead and I come downstairs. I put on CNBC. Now I'm starting to watch it, and I'm like, okay, they're talking about, it's going to go, it's going to start trading any minute, and they're talking about price points and all these sorts of things, and I'm like, I'm getting excited. I'm like, okay, I might potentially buy this. I don't know. So I start looking into things a little bit more, and I'm re-going over the numbers, and I'm looking at their profit. I'm like, oh my gosh, 730 mil to 800 mil profit this company's been pouring in. I'm like, oh my gosh. And the weird thing about this number is, this has happened all so fast. No, everybody's completely clueless on if this is sustainable or if this could go up a lot more because they just started making they just started reaching this type of profitability. So the thing is, some people are on the fence that this is going to crash and their profitability is going to erode massively over the next few years. Other people I don't even know if there's that many people thinking that. But the thing I don't even think a lot of people think about is what happens if they start making $1 billion plus in profit per quarter. We're talking about quarterly. I think a lot of people are just thinking about the downside, not even the upside. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh man, this is pretty darn attractive. And so I start doing some numbers and I'm like, okay, let's say they make 750 mil a quarter over the next 4 quarters. That's about $3 billion. Now, they could make less than that. They could also make a lot more than that, right? Who's to say they can't start making $1 billion? They just went from losing money not that long ago to now they're making 700 something million, if not 800 million in a quarter. Who's to say it's not going to go to $1 billion or $2 billion a quarter soon? So I'm just doing, let's say, 750 mil net income per quarter over the next 4 quarters. That's $3 billion, okay? $3 billion, all right? Now, let's say the company goes public at about $100 billion, which I believe, if I did my math correct, I think at $100 billion, it had to be over $400 a share to actually trade at $100 billion. So I'm saying, okay, so let's say it's trading at 400 something, $100 billion. Divide those numbers out. It's basically trading at a forward P of 33. Forward P of 33, once again, it's like, is that high or is that low? Okay, for a super high growth company like Coinbase that has their revenues and their net income going insane right now, this would usually be an extremely low number, stupidly low, okay? I mean, companies with the type of growth Coinbase has right now would usually be trading at forward Ps in the hundreds, if not, dare I say, the thousands. The thousands, okay? And this one's trading at 33. Why is it trading at 33? Well, some folks are like, well, what if their profitability they just started making this crazy profit? What if it just falls off and no one wants to buy Bitcoin and Ethereum through Coinbase anymore and, all that falls off? So that's what some people are thinking, but what I can tell you is 33 is kind of laughable. That's if it's at 100 billion. Now, if it's at less than $100 billion market cap, then we're talking this is even a lower forward P, as long as they can just basically keep up what they've had for net income very recently, just over the next 4 quarters, right? So I'm starting to think about all this, and I'm starting to get, pretty darn excited. Then I'm starting to think about the risks of a direct listing, because a direct listing is different than an IPO, right? On a direct listing, basically, you don't really have the support of large institutions, right? When you go through IPO process, you have the big banks that kind of have your back, right? And they're kind of there to support your price, right? In an IPO, existing shareholders typically have a lockup period of 6 to 12 months, during which they cannot dump shares on the market. A direct listing, however, does not have a lockup. So shareholders can sell whenever. So I am thinking about that too. And I'm like, what if a bunch of insiders want to sell a bunch of shares and it's not the buying pressure? I'm like, this one could go south. But needless to say, I'm starting to feel FOMO at this point, okay? I'm starting to feel really excited. We're like moments away from this thing going IPO. And I'm starting to think, okay, you know what? I think I'm going to buy this thing right on the open. I've never bought a company when it went public ever in my life. I'm like, YOLO, you only live once, man. Let's go ahead and let's do this. This is a big one, okay? And this is where things went really wrong, okay? So usually I wake up and I have some tattoo chefs, some TTCF, okay? And usually I buy 1,000 shares because usually the stock's down. And then I eat some of the food to make myself feel better. But where things went south today is I didn't eat any tattooed chef. I didn't eat any TTCF. What I did instead is I ate some Raising Cane's, okay? And that caniac combo, it makes you go crazy. And so I started just like raging, going wild. And I'm like, let's go. Let's freaking buy this Coinbase IPO. And next thing you know, I'm in. Right at the open. They're like, shares are trading. I'm like on Fidelity. Boom, 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 boom. Bought 50 shares of the stock immediately. Filled at $3.93, okay? I'm like, holy smokes, this ain't no joke, because I just paid $393 for a stock. I barely just started looking into 24 hours ago. I'm like, holy smokes, man, this is exactly everything I would never preach to anybody. I always tell people, you don't buy a company when it goes public. You don't just buy a stock you just start looking into. And next thing you know, I'm like doing all these bad things. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know what happened to me, but today is just not my day, okay? But then the devil says, you're going to make some money today, Jeremy. And I'm like, ooh, give me that money, baby. And the next thing you know, I'm up over $1,000. In a snap of fingers, I just made over $1,000. And I'm like, woo-wee. And this was when the stock was at $4.15. Next thing you know, the stock's at $4.20, $4.25, $4.27. My wife shouts at me. She says, hey, sell at $4.30, okay? Well, I'm too busy looking at my profits, so I don't even know if I got to sell, because I didn't get to sell, actually, okay? And next thing you know, the stock starts tanking, and it hits a peak, and it just starts going down and 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 down. I'm like, what the heck, man? And I'm like, well, maybe it'll spike back up, so buy another 50 shares. And so I buy another 50 shares at $377.09. And if I wasn't already having enough pain, what happens to the stock? It just starts going down and down and down and down again. More! And the next thing you know, I have to buy another 100 shares of the stock. As if I didn't learn my lesson the first 2 times. I buy 100 shares at $356, and I'm like, man, what the heck? I'm buying all these shares above what my original price point was that I was planning on. And I'm like, what am I even doing? But I'm buying and I'm buying. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I went from just being a fun situation where I was like, oh, let me do a YOLO play. I've never bought a stock on the IPO day before. This would be fun. And next thing you know, I'm all of a sudden making this into I guess a long-term investment now at this point, okay? And so I post this in breadcrumbs tab. I said, beginning of the day, Coinbase is worth at least $100 billion. 3 hours later, Coinbase is worth at least as much as a Taco Bell franchise. I think I should have used Arby's. It would have been even funnier if I would have used an Arby's franchise in there, okay? It's going south fast, okay? It's going south really fast. And so I had to learn my lesson the first 3 times, right? Oh, man. No, of course not. I own 200 shares, so I'm like, I love 222. I love it when it's, 3 twos together. And I'm like, if I'm going to be wild and crazy, why not just go all the way wild and crazy and make no sense, okay? So I bought another 22 shares at $326. Who knows? Maybe those are the ones that will actually make me some money, or maybe not, okay? So now at this point, I hold 222 shares. My cost base is $81,352. I'm already down $8,400 in a matter of hours on this stock. I'm like, what in the flippin' flapjack is going on here, okay? So this is where we're at with Coinbase, okay? Now, what makes me mad about this, and then we're going to talk about where I think Coinbase stock is going over time, and I'm going to try to talk a little more fundamental for you guys and try to slow down a bit, okay? Just slow down a bit. But what makes me bad about all this is that video I posted last night, man. I had specific price targets in mind for the stock. I had specific price targets in mind, and I didn't stick to it. And I got FOMO'd. I got FOMO'd into this one. And I just, I went crazy at it at some prices that I wasn't originally planning on doing, essentially, okay? So now let's talk about where I think Coinbase stock is going from here, and my perspective on this and things like that, okay? Let me slow it down, okay? I hope that was entertaining. If it was entertaining, smash a thumbs up for me, guys. I need it. I need all the thumbs up I can get today, man. It might make me feel better about my $8,400 downward move I'm already down on this stock, okay? So here's what I think with Coinbase, all right? So first off, I think this is I don't want to call it a misunderstood stock, but I don't think Wall Street has any clue what to do with this stock right now. Let me be very clear. I don't think most investors have any clue to what to do with the stock, maybe including me, okay? I don't think Wall Street has any clue how to value this company right now. And this is what is going to make this, I think, a super volatile stock, because I think one day you can have an analyst or somebody on Wall Street saying this stock should be valued at $1,000+ today, and you're going to have somebody else come out and say, I saw somebody saying this stock should be worth, I think it was $60 right now, $60. This is the type of divergence we're going to have in the stock over the next, this isn't going to just play out over tomorrow and this week. This is going to play out over the next several months. I think the stock's going to be one of the most volatile we've seen in a long time in the market, and especially for a large market cap company. Because today, at one point, it was trading over 100 billion, right? So let's say it's trading anywhere between 65 billion and 100 billion over the next several months, right? I think this stock's going to be incredibly volatile, because when you look at the profitability and you look at a potential net income for this company of, let's say, 2 billion to 4 billion this year, after last year they had net income of what was it, 300 million? That's epic growth. They just grew revenues year over year, what was it, 9-fold? So when you're looking at it from that perspective, you're in one of the fastest growth companies in the world, especially a big company, one of the fastest growing big companies in the world. And so from that perspective, investors are like, how is this stock not the greatest deal in the history of mankind for big companies that have gone public, essentially? But then you're going to have the other folks on Wall Street that say, okay, this is a brokerage business. They're going to look at it and they're going to say, this is a brokerage business. The fees Coinbase is getting are super high today. And those fees are going to become less and less and less over time, which is going to erode their business. And so therefore, this crazy profitability we're going to see in 2021 for this company, this might not stay this way long term. And therefore, this stock deserves to be valued at blah, blah, blah price. But then you go from there and you can say, okay, well, who's to say Coinbase isn't going to expand into more products and services over time? Who's to say Coinbase is just going to stay stagnant and the products and services they're offering today are the same things they're offering for all of eternity? They have crazy amounts of monthly active users. They have crazy amounts of users in general on this platform, like tens of millions of people have basically signed up accounts for Coinbase. So who's to say that this company's not going to grow to 100 million plus users or 200 million plus users and then launch other financial products off of that? Who's to say they're not going to come out with debit card products, credit card products, maybe different types of savings accounts? Who's to say they're not going to launch all these different products over time, and maybe even, dare I say, products and services that we haven't even thought of yet, right? I mean, they did it one time, right? Who's to say they can't come out with products and services that, everybody's just like, oh, what's the big deal with that? Like Coinbase 5 years ago, you would have been like, who cares about that? Some crypto, I don't know, you can buy cryptos on it. Who cares? That's going to be nothing, right? Here today, it's the talk of Wall Street. It's the talk of everything I'm talking about today, right? And so who's to say they're not going to come out with some other epic things in the future? When you got a CEO in place who can come out with some amazing products and services, who's to say they can't do it again and again and again, right? And so when you look at it from that perspective, you can say, okay, maybe this is actually an extremely undervalued stock. I think this is going to be the hardest stock I've seen maybe in my life as far as valuing this stock. I don't think anybody has any clue. I think you can make a legit argument that Coinbase should be valued at under 50 billion a day. I think you can make a legit argument and make sense, like not like you're crazy, but I think you can make a legit argument that this company should be valued at $1 trillion today. And that's what's so scary about this stock, because it's usually not like that. Usually with most stocks, there's like a, somewhat of a range that you could have a legit argument, it's worth this much. Like Tattooed Chef, right? You could have a legit argument that maybe that's worth anywhere from $15 if you're really bearish to maybe $30. But with a stock like Coinbase, I mean, I could understand somebody making a legit argument about this stock being 50 billion. I could also understand an argument about this stock being $1 trillion company today. That's where this stock is going to be one of the most volatile we've ever seen, in my opinion, in the stock market, and especially in when it comes to like big tech. But I would not be surprised at all if we actually see these shares go up and go up substantially over the next several weeks and months. And here's why I'm thinking of this. I think as people get more educated on this company, I think as Brian Armstrong maybe gets out there and does some more media stuff and explains this business model more, I think that's going to calm a lot of people's nerves. Then they're going to look at the raw profitability. Then if they can come in next quarter with some crazy revenue and profit numbers next quarter as well, that's also going to make people on Wall Street say, oh, maybe there's something here that's pretty big. Remember, Wall Street's been late to the crypto game in general, right? So that's another thing you kind of have working against the stock price in the short term, is like Wall Street's just barely starting to catch up on the crypto wave. Now they're all of a sudden put with this company, and I saw it on CNBC today. They're trying to compare it against Goldman Sachs. They're trying to compare Coinbase against Goldman Sachs. They're trying to compare Coinbase against, like other like the NYSE and all these different like organizations and whatnot on Wall Street and other financial firms. And I'm like I don't think that's the right perspective to be looking at this stock at all, to be quite honest. I'm like, why does that even matter to like value them alongside of Goldman Sachs? Like Goldman Sachs is trying to, I like Goldman Sachs, but they're trying to eke out, a few percent revenue growth a year. This company's growing revenue in the hundreds of percent. You can't compare Coinbase to Goldman Sachs, right? Coinbase, it just saw their profitability go through the sky. No, not through the sky, through the universe, man. Goldman Sachs is trying to eke out small gains in their profitability over time, right? It's an established company that doesn't have much growth, and Coinbase has crazy growth. And so this is definitely, I think, the most confusing stock we're going to have seen. I think this makes Palantir look simple. That's the crazy part is. I think that, Palantir has been one that's kind of baffled people's mind about how should that company be valued? Where should Palantir's valuation be? I think Coinbase makes Palantir look like child's play when it comes to figuring out valuation, to be quite honest, because this Coinbase situation is just absolutely nuts. I mean, just absolutely nuts. So obviously, I'm going to be tracking the stock. I'll try to keep you guys up to date as always. Will I buy the stock? I'm going to be very tempted to buy more of the stock, I'll be honest, if it goes under 300. If it goes under 300, I might have to, as just a long-term, buy and hold situation. I was supposed to try to, only buy under 300 today or under 350, and I, obviously bought several shares over 350. So I got a little bit FOMO'd into this one, I'll be honest. And but hey, man, this is my one time I bought a stock when it went public. And I think if you're a long-term investor, I think there's a lot to be excited about here. I think there's also things to be scared about, obviously. Not in terms of the share price, just in terms of like what happens if their profits do erode over time and things like that. Brian Armstrong's been very clear, CEO of this company. He said basically that he thinks, that could be much, much longer term. In the short term, he's seeing no weakness there. So, you know, and I remember Andre last night in Millennial Money, he brought up a good point. He's like, is somebody really going to, you know, switch from this brokerage to that brokerage if they're already using that? And I was like, that's a pretty good point. I can see some people potentially doing it. But a lot of people just don't care that much, like if there's a small difference in the fee or something like that. So anyways, this is a crazy situation. I want to hear from you guys on this Coinbase. Did you buy the stock today? Are you planning to buy the stock? I would love to hear from you in that comment section. As always, if you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you give subscribe. I'm definitely going to keep you guys up to date on Coinbase, as long as with a million other things. If you don't mind, smash a thumbs up before you leave. I do appreciate it in a huge way. That helps out our YouTube channel in a massive way. Much love. Peace.